In part 1, we explored fast fashion in the Western world, but now we will delve into the impacts it's having on sweatshop workers, local communities and the environment. We spoke to environmental consultancy Eunomia to find out more.
People were aware of the full impact of textile production in particular. They probably think more carefully about what they bought. So for example, some of the impacts of fast fashion might be around local pollution in a river or a stream that then has an impact on local communities in terms of, you know, the children that live in those areas, people's life expectancy, all those sorts of things. And then of course there's the, you know, often reported issues around child labour, inappropriate labour rights and so on for people working in often very bad conditions in some of these factories. And often the brands in the UK and elsewhere do what they can to audit these factories, but it's extremely difficult. And I think there's a reason often why fast fashion is so cheap. Clearly, you know, it's cheap because people are getting paid relatively little to produce that clothing in the first place, and that other aspects of design and manufacture are perhaps cutting corners.
We then spoke to ethical footwear specialist Sven Segal, who when travelling the world as a shoe designer was shocked by the manufacturing processes he found.
Part of the designer's job is the development process, so you visit the shoe factories, and I've travelled a lot to the Far East, especially working with big shoe factories, and it was difficult to see how the factory workers were treated. Very, very long hours and exposure to all sorts of harmful substances from tanneries who actually work with the leathers, to basic stuff like gluing the shoe, so the upper part of the sole. This is how most shoes are put together, by using solvent-based glues, which are very toxic, and sort of constantly asking questions as to why these poor workers have to be exposed to these toxic fumes on a daily basis, where there are solutions out there.
The devastating impact of fast fashion does not stop there. The clothing industry is also coming at a huge cost to the environment. Eunomia tells us more.
Fashion actually has a huge impact on the environment. So the World Bank, for example, has identified that around 20% of all global water pollution is related to textiles production, and that about 25% of all chemicals manufactured globally are actually related to textile production. But there's still, I think, a majority of companies that perhaps are taking very little action in this area and are purely working on a sort of commercial imperative.
The truth is that the cost, the price that we see on products through fast fashion actually don't reflect their true cost, the cost of the environment and the cost of the workers that made it. So you know, we need to learn to pay the true cost of the products that we're buying. We've started to think of clothing and footwear as being disposable. It shouldn't be. It isn't disposable, not at a very, very serious environmental cost.
As increasingly disturbing environmental reports are released every year, consumers are now starting to connect their politics to their purchases. Join us in part 3 to explore the rapid rise in sustainable brands that is beginning to force major companies to be more transparent.